The old cathedrals often have sublime artworks hidden away in the darkest corners for only God to see. The same goes for murder.
How do you spot the film's hidden intentions? What do you look for? And how do you know what to look for? Well, there are probably many things, but I always start by going through the director's filmography, as doing so naturally unveils a pattern of techniques that the director employs to tell a story. For instance, this is my favorite scene from the 2018 film The House That Jack Built. The protagonist, Jack, a narcissistic sociopath and a serial killer with OCD, standing in the middle of a street with Uma Thurman. Alright, I choose this scene not for its cinematic quality per se, but because it's a perfect example of how scenes can disclose information about the director's style, and in turn, the film itself. If you love films, chances are you've heard of Lars von Trier. If you haven't, he's a Danish filmmaker notorious for his provocative and disturbing subject matter, self-indulgent and meta storytelling methods, repetitive music, Stellan Skarsgård. Oh, and of course, chapter marks. Over the years, he has become this industry figure that people either absolutely love or absolutely despise. I personally tend to enjoy his films more than I should because, hate it or love it, his works are fascinating to watch. He never quite follows the conventional filmmaking rules and plays by his own rules to tell a one-of-a-kind story that most of the time nobody really asks for, but is alluring for that exact reason. With a pinch of insanity and a whole lot of miscalculation, I decided to revisit every single one of his films to allow myself some break time. Yeah, no breaks there. The House That Jack Built was the last film of his in line and was never my favorite, but after watching more than 20 hours of Lars von Trier back to back, the film hit me rather differently this time around when reaching this particular scene.
Hi.
Hi. Who are you?
Police.
One of the most commonly tackled issues when discussing Trier is his preferred editing style. He's known to refrain from using traditional coverages and instead focuses on master shots and freeform shooting to create a documentary-like picture, i.e. the camera seems as if it doesn't know what will happen. It always follows the action a step behind or accidentally ahead and generates an almost comically chaotic picture that is raw and therefore authentic. As he is one of the founding members of the Dogma 95 manifesto that was heavily influenced by the French New Wave movement, listing a number of rules that challenge the time-honored values of filmmaking and aim attention at taking back power for the directors as artists, his works frequently stray away from the accustomed looks of modern cinema. This can be something as subtle as breaking continuity of the film's narrative with costumes and set props, all the way to rejecting the 180-degree rule and cutting to the opposite side of the axis without a neutral shot.
Do you think I joke? You have to study!
Come on, Simas. Stop.
The idea is that by keeping the camera on one side of an imaginary axis, the shots establish accurate spatial representation and conserve the rhythm of that scene for the audience. So shots that go against this rule are, and I highlight this term, commonly believed to be disorienting for the audience and destructive for the scene.
It's a natural, healthy reaction.
But that's not enough to call his style a nightmare, unless we're talking about his jarring jump cuts.
No, I don't see.
You don't even... It's really big and the camera's gonna end. I hate that.
And I say jarring because jump cuts are meant to render the effect of jumping forward in time. And what he does feels more like a sabotage of the classic 30-degree rule. For example, take a look at this scene from Dogville, his 2003 film.
I hate it for you to see me like this. I can't bear that I'm doubting you. I'm sorry.
There's not enough passage of time between the two cuts to apply a proper jump cut, and it sticks out like a sore thumb. But that's not to say it's an objectively horrible edit. By using awkward cuts in the right moment, Trier visually displays the darker, noteworthy undercurrent of the situation the characters are facing. If you go back to the scene and watch it frame by frame, the audio intentionally keeps running for some time after the cut to force cognitive dissonance to the viewers.
I'm sorry.
In this scene, Grace is at her most vulnerable. She's been having difficulty being truly accepted by the people of Dogville and was considering leaving the town altogether in fear of being a burden and possibly triggering someone to hand her over to the police. After Tom hesitantly tells her of the townspeople's concerns, Grace finally asks if anyone else is aware of the business card Tom has received from the gang that's after her.
Come on, Grace. I burn it first thing.
So this cut is subtly hinting that Grace is having difficulty controlling her emotions. She's nervous and doubtful, but is obliged to act calm and trusting.
Good night.
Likewise, in Melancholia, most of these jolting cuts happen in the first half of the film to establish the main character Justine's depressive inner state.
Then, at 11:30, the bride and groom will cut the cake. In here.
The discrepancy between the unbroken audio and the fractured visual helps signal her potentiating depression. The jump cuts are certainly part of his regular workflow, and so they may bear no significance whatsoever. But whenever a cut is this much noticeable in his films, it's usually for good reasons. So if you can decode the significance of that given scene, you'll be able to unravel the film's bigger picture and appreciate its direction. With that, let's go back to the scene in question, featuring Jack and Uma Thurman, conveniently named Lady One. This scene is guilty of everything we've discussed: spontaneous camera movements, confusing angles, and awkward jump cuts.
I'm sure there'll be another serial killer passing by who can give you a lift back to Sonny's.
Not to mention the horrifically funny and meta tongue-in-cheek scenario of the lady bringing up everything Jack actually does and will do in this film.
Bury my body back up there by those trees. But you'd have to remember to dig 6 feet down so the foxes couldn't dig up my grave.
Including my favorite.
I thought everyone had a Jack.
Come on, really? You see, at the end of the day, we do not know if Jack is telling an objectively true story in this first incident, or if it's what he only subjectively experienced as being true, going back to the wink-wink conversation the two had. The camera work, the jump cuts that defy reality, and the disorganized edits all point to the fact that Jack is an unreliable narrator, and that his mind is as disjointed and confused as the movements on screen. It also hints that the stories that are to follow will be just as chaotic and scattered as this scene plays out, and that ultimately we're solely viewing everything from Jack's perspective, no matter how much it may seem otherwise down the road. These points are nicely proven by the routinely given images of Jack holding up signs of the topic at hand, along with the fact that he has literally been talking with a part of himself. Either that or Verge is an actual guide for Jack's soul as a reference to Dante's Inferno, but that doesn't make Jack any more reliable. Whether he was lying about certain details or if his mind decided to change the reality of the events are not of importance as much as it being a statement for his deranged mind.
Call me Verge.
As a cherry on top, the eerie music that opens the scene is reminiscent of his past works like Melancholia, and clues the audience of the repetitive nature it will embody over the course of the film to bring us right back to this very first scene. This scene, although plain and simple at first sight, is the perfect summary of how Jack's wandering thoughts will progressively obscure the image we're so desperately trying to paint, and how Lars von Trier is just the same. Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching this video. I really watched every Lars von Trier film I can get my hands on, and it took a long time, let me tell you. Especially because his films are not considered a walk in the park unless the park is hell filled with angst and pain. Alright, other than that, thank you everyone who supported my merch collection during the launch special. Yes, there's a Spikima merch, link in the description, as well as everything else that might be interesting, all in the description below. Well then, until next time, that's it for me.